We are back live on YouTube for another episode of the DFS Express, presented by Loudmouth MMA, the DFS Army, and Newsom MMA. I am your host. Good to be back live again, the Daily Fantasy Sniper, here to talk UFC Moscow. Obviously from Moscow, Russia, the main event, Alexei Olynyk taking on Mark Hunt. I want to thank everyone who watched last week's video. Again, wasn't live last week, technical difficulties, but we are back live again. Make sure to check out those other guys. Newsom MMA has tons of great content in his site, betting, some other DraftKings guy, other opinions and breakdowns, which I'm not, anyone who caps MMA or breaks down MMA fights knows it's incredibly difficult. More opinions, the better. If you think you are the one and only, you're probably a little full of yourself and not a winning player, to be honest. So check out some of those guys over there. And also Loudmouth MMA, do for the one and only, you're probably a little full of yourself and not a winning player, to be honest. So check out some of those guys over there. And also Loudmouth MMA, do full breakdowns there. This video and episode, if you're listening on the Loudmouth stream, focuses on your daily fantasy contest pricing on DraftKings. And the DFS Army, DraftKings content, FanDuel, all daily fantasy sports, football, MMA, NASCAR, all that stuff. Go and check them out there. The link is in my description, dfsarmy.com. Use my code SNIPER to get 10% off for every month you're a part of the Army. Great coaches, content over there. Let's dive into this card. I'm excited for UFC Moscow. It is a really difficult card. I'll give some more slate thoughts to the DFS Army VIPs, which we do in Slack chat. I'm going to, in this episode, run through just the fights, quick breakdowns, who I think the better DraftKings plays are. But the reason the slate breakdown is going to be important is there's not a lot of value on this card. There is a lot of big favorites, a pretty lopsided card. You're going to be looking for spots to either build a mid-range lineup or what dogs can you roster. Roster construction is going to be very important this week. But let's get into the fight breakdowns. First up, Merab Dvalishvili, minus 550, taking on Terrion Ware, plus 425. Dvalishvili is 9,200 on DraftKings. Terrion Ware is 7,000. Everyone has said it, will continue to say it. Terrion Ware gets terrible matchups. His 3 UFC fights, Cody Stamann, Sean O'Malley, Tom Duquesnoy. And Merab Dvalishvili, I think, is in that boat, is really good prospect. And even more importantly, he's DraftKings gold. He pushes a high pace, looks for takedowns. He scored, he's 0-2 in the UFC, but he scored 71 and 79 points in losses. Ricky Simon was the controversial, was he or was he not unconscious at the final horn. I flip-flopped several times just watching that. Either way, it goes down as a loss, and he lost a close split decision to Frankie Saenz, who he just couldn't hold down. Terrion Ware, again, I don't think he's going to be able to stop takedowns here. Dvalishvili should rack up takedowns, possibly get a submission, but even if he doesn't, just the pace he pushes is incredible. Takedowns, advances, strikes when he throws them. Dvalishvili is the preferred play because I think he wins, and even in a loss, he's shown he can score 135 pounds. I don't think Ware finishes him. Dvalishvili is the preferred play at 9,200. Next up, Ramazan Emeev, 9,300, taking on Stefan Sukulic. Sukulic, there's no tape out on him, which is really rough, taking the fight on short notice. Ramazan Emeev, 2-0 in the UFC. Impressive wins against Sam Alvey and Alberto Mina, but he doesn't score well. He's not a DraftKings scorer. Emeev, 65 points against Mina, 54 points against Alvey. He really, and those are both in decisions. He's a well-rounded fighter, can make the fight dirty. Sukulic, from what I've seen, just is not UFC caliber. But again, I've seen very limited information on him. And because Emeev is priced all the way up at 9,300, he's the preferred play because I think he wins this fight handily. I do think he's a solid prospect. The odds in this fight, by the way, Emeev is minus 525. I think this comes down to a GPP play. I don't trust Sukulic, whose name is one of the few in this card I'm really struggling with. Emeev is the preferred play here. I think he's got better striking, better grappling, can pretty much win however he wants. I just don't know how many risks he's going to take to look for a finish. So Amiv at 9,300. Sorry, nothing jaw-dropping there. We will get to one of the few upsets I'm looking at in this card. Jordan Johnson, 8,700 is the favorite, taking on, it is Adam Yediyev at 7,500. Jordan Johnson is the favorite, minus 260. Yediyev plus 220. Look, there's issues here because Yediyev hasn't fought in 3.5 years, almost 4 years. Jordan Johnson's coming down from to middleweight from 205, where he was a big guy at 205. No impressives win, though. Henrique da Silva, decision. Fortuna, decision. Adam Milstead, split decision. He can get takedowns, has a wrestling background, and is going to be bigger. But he's got a huge weight cut in front of him on a week and a half notice. He's taking this fight on short notice. A lot of shuffling on this card. Can he keep any kind of a pace? The one thing Yediyev does is he pushes an incredible pace. He's very aggressive. He throws bombs. He could get finished quickly. He's got a low floor, but really it's a pretty similar story for most of the underdogs on this card. Johnson, I'm not overly impressed with. Yediyev, when he has fought, has shown flashes. I like his style for DraftKings, just in terms of the aggression. As far as underdogs go, I'm going to look at Adam Yediyev as someplace I'm willing to look against somebody taking a fight on short notice, cutting a substantial amount of weight. I do want to see how Johnson looks on Friday, but as of right now, Yediyev and his aggressive style, I think he's live to get a knockout, and he'll be my preferred play at 7,500. A quick break here. Just want to mention to you guys, if you are watching on YouTube, go ahead, type any questions in. Usually have a bunch as they come in. Thoughts on fights, lineup construction. I'll answer anything that gets asked of me here in chat. So let me know. And if you are watching this after the fact on Newsom MMA or listening on Loudmouth MMA, we usually record this Wednesdays between 7 to 8:30 Eastern time. I'll put out a link on my Twitter at the DFS Sniper with the 1S. You can join in there. Moving on. Next up, a guy that brings up a lot of bad memories for a lot of the betting community, including myself. Magomed Ankalaev, 9,100, taking on Martian Prasena at 7,100. Ankalaev minus 440. Prasena plus 350. Look, I don't think Prasena is UFC caliber. Took a fight against Sam Alvey, got stung, and then walked forward with his hands down and got knocked out and just knocked into next century. Ankalaev was winning his UFC debut against Paul Craig for 14 minutes and 59 seconds before he got triangled. Look, long story short, I don't think Prasena could stop the takedowns of Ankalaev. We like people who look for takedowns on DraftKings. I like Ankalaev. He wasn't going to score great against Paul Craig. He's going to score 79, which if he would have won, which still would have been underdoing a little bit. But in this matchup, Prasena is somebody I don't think is UFC caliber. Can't stop a takedown. I like Ankalaev at 9,100. I'm also hoping people will be off of him because he burned so many people in the Paul Craig fight. So Ankalaev's the preferred play at 9,100. Next up, a fight I've been talking about on Twitter in the last couple hours here. Marbek Tysimov, 8,900, taking on Desmond Green at 7,300. There's a lot of outside of the cage stuff going on with Desmond Green. If you haven't heard, he was the catalyst, or he caused a 5-car car accident where 2 people died. That was, I believe, last month. All kinds of questions whether he's going to take this fight, if he's going to fly out. I haven't heard yet. I haven't heard the fight's been canceled. So I'm going to operate as if the fight is happening. Takes on Marbek Tysimov, who is a guy we only see once a year. He's got tons of visa issues, but he has really big power. He has finished, I believe it's 5 straight UFC fights after a loss to Michel Prazeres. Knocked out Eryk Silva, knocked out Damir Hadzovic, knocked out Alan Patrick. Desmond Green is a tough guy. What's interesting here is while Tysimov has some wrestling, I think Green could be the better grappler. However, he doesn't use it a ton. If he stands and trades with Tysimov, he is liable to get knocked out. Tysimov will not be a fade of mine. He has got an upside, especially at 8,900. But the knock on Green I've heard is how is he going to cope with what's going on outside of the cage? The other knock, other than he likes to stand and trade in this matchup, that won't be good for him. Green can grapple. We saw him hold his own on the ground for a while against Michel Prazeres, which is no easy feat, especially because Prazeres was like 8 pounds overweight going into that fight. Green, I mentioned, tough guy and can grapple here. And that's just something when I'm really looking for dogs here. It's, I believe, just as of right now, unless something catches me off guard. There's one other spot I might go to. But Green and Yediyev are really the two underdogs that are standing out to me right now. So just the grappling upside of Green against Tyson off. There's a really low floor there, but like I said, you're hurting. I'll take Desmond Green as the preferred play at 7,300 because I'm hurting for value. Tyson off, not a cash play, whereas Green could be a punt. Rustab Khamzat, 9,500, taking on Cajun Johnson, 6,700. Look, the UFC hates Cajun Johnson. I heard people not know why. Look, it's because he was at the forefront of that fighters union the UFC wanted nothing to do with. Him and Leslie Smith kind of in the same boat there. Got subbed quick against Islam Makhachev in late July. He's back again here. Not much of a better matchup here against Khamzat. Khamzat, should be able to grapple Cajun Johnson. 9,500. I don't think this fight's going to score incredibly highly though. Like Khamzat scored well against Chris Wade, 6 takedowns, but Wade's a good wrestler. It could pop back up. Silva, Sago, his fight against Green, like he got a takedown each round and pretty much just stayed there. In those last 3 fights, 52, 71, 62 points. At 9,500, you need a finish here from Khamzat. There's also the possibility that Cajun Johnson, makes this a really boring fight at range. And if he's able to keep it at range, he might have, it'll be a close fight on the feet. Ultimately, I don't think Johnson does that, but I'm not sure Khamzat pays out his price tag. So despite what I just said, I think the better DraftKings play, just points per dollar. I'm absolutely not picking Cajun Johnson to win his fight, but at 6,700 is a pure punt play. If you're really hurting and you want to pay up in multiple positions, give me Cajun Johnson at 6,700 and hope he makes it out of the first round and can at least stop a couple takedowns. I don't see that happening, but I also don't want to pay 9,500 for Khamzat. Next up, the guy that I'm going to pay up, that's probably where I'm going. Petr Yan at 9,600. Most expensive fighter on the card, taking on Jin Soo Sun at 6,600. Listen, no one wants to fight Petr Yan. He had multiple opponents on this card fall off. Destroyed Teruto Ishihara in his UFC debut. Hits hard for a bantamweight. I think is going to make a run into the top 10. I'm not sure. I think people are touting him top 5, future champion, title challenger. Let me see a little more, but he's clearly very talented. And of what I've seen of Susan, which is very little, he's not quite ready yet. Petr Yan is worlds better. Whereas I'm willing to punt with Cajun Johnson in desperation time. Not the case for Susan. Petr Yan is the preferred play at 9,600. Next up, Khalid Martsaliev at 8,400, taking on CB Dollaway at 7,800. CB Dollaway is on a 2-fight winning streak, but he didn't win his last fight. I mean, he did because Hector Lombard got himself disqualified for throwing a punch way after the horn, deservingly getting disqualified and knocking CB Dollaway's head clean off. I think Lombard was going to win that fight. Did not need to do that. He did. Other than that, Herman put up a good score in a decision against Ed Herman. And before that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak. But big names, Lyoto Machida, Michael Bisping, Nate Marquardt. Martsaliev, being the UFC newcomer, he also is taking this fight on short notice as multiple people fell to the wayside against CB Dollaway. Kept having opponents canceled for one reason or another. This was probably the best matchup for him. It's a fight that I actually don't think is going to be very high output. You don't see Dollaway throw a ton. Martsaliev, I think, is going to look to grapple here, but Dollaway's a good grappler himself. I think they kind of neutralize each other. I think they stay on the feet. Dollaway, though, I have a few concerns about his chin. I can't trust 2018 CB Dollaway. I'm going to take the newcomer Martsaliev as the better DraftKings play. It is a GPP play. I can't trust him enough in cash. I think he will look to grapple. I also I think he could hurt Dollaway. I think Dollaway's just about done here. So give me Martsaliev at 8,400. Next up, Thiago Alves is the underdog at 7,200, taking on Alexei Kochenko at 9,000. Look, these guys, again, Alves is just too old at this point. They're kind of similar in that Kochenko is a talented Muay Thai striker. I think what Alves used to be able to do really well, Kochenko just does better. Alves coming off of a knockout loss to Curtis Millender. Before that, he beat Patrick Cote in Cote's last fight, and then he had losses to Jim Miller, Carlos Condit. I think that the Jim Miller fight showed that Alves can be taken down and controlled clearly, and Curtis Millender shows that he's got some holes in his striking. And I think that those are both places that Kochenko could have advantages in this fight, should have advantages. My issue with Kochenko is he is a very big favorite at 9,000, minus 525. Newcomer is not my favorite up in that range, but I don't think I can even give the point per dollar nod to Thiago Alves. I probably won't full fade Alves in GPPs, but point per dollar, I think Kochenko is just all around the better play, the better fighter. So he'll be my pick here at 9,000. Next up, Shamil Abdurakhimov, 8,300, taking on Andrei Arlovski at 7,900. Abdurakhimov, look, I don't rate him very highly at all. I've seen a lot of love for him. Yeah, he knocked out Chase Sherman. That's great. Chase Sherman gets hit a ton. Not impressed. Sorry, just not. Control Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis showed he doesn't like to be grappled, and that's what Abdurakhimov does. He makes these fights dirty. He got takedowns against Lewis. Lewis was able to get back up. Same thing against. He got a decision win against Anthony Hamilton. He wins these fights, just these dirty, ugly fights where he can close the distance. Walt Harris, he beat another guy who's a boxer, couldn't control the grappling. Andrei Arlovski, on the other hand, I think we've dispelled the notion he's got a bad chin. Hasn't been knocked out in the longest time, and stood toe to toe with Tai Tuivasa last fight. Overall, I think Abdurakhimov will not be able to grapple here. I think Arlovski's got that veteran savvy to keep this at range. I don't think Abdurakhimov is as athletic as Martian Tybura, who's able to take down Arlovski. I just think Arlovski keeps this fight at range, and from there, I actually like his boxing. He's become more of a point fighter at his older age. They're heavyweights. It's hard to trust heavyweights in cash games on DraftKings, but overall, I like Arlovski to keep this one at range, win a decision, and he's 7,900, so he's the preferred play here for me on DraftKings. Next up, our co-main event, Nikita Krylov, 8,200, taking on Jan Blachowicz at 8,000. I've actually seen a lot of love for Nikita Krylov. I'm not sure if he was kidding, but I saw the good guy Greg on Twitter, who used to go by the MMA Prophet, saying he'd seen a lot of love for Blachowicz. I'm not sure if he was kidding or not, but I've actually seen a lot of people picking Krylov. His first fight back in the UFC since 2016, where he most recently he had lost to Misha Serkinov. He's been on the regional scene. Before that, he had rattled off, I think, five straight wins. Ed Herman, Bahoso, Rogério de Lima. Not impressive names, but Krylov, a super talented, athletic guy. What I think keeps getting lost, it's amazing to me that keeps getting lost, is Blachowicz has won 3 straight fights. He lost to Gustafsson. He lost to Patrick Cummins, which I get. Those are, Cummins especially was a bad loss. Excuse me. Devin Clark, caught in a submission. Cannoneer, an athletic guy who's able to take down, showed a good game plan there. And Jimmy Manuwa, he knocked down and took down Jimmy Manuwa. Maybe Manuwa's on the decline, but that is a top 5 win. Krylov, to me, Krylov has never been to a decision in his 29 professional fights. Blachowicz seems to constantly go to a decision, so something's going to give here. The odds makers have this at minus 250 to end inside the distance. What's interesting is because when Krylov doesn't win, he tends to quit. He didn't look good in the Serkinov fight. I think Blachowicz, a big part of this is going to be how Blachowicz looks on Friday. Look, I have my suspicions with his change in body type in the last 2 years. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Read into that what you will. I want to see how Blachowicz looks. I'm not quick to write him off like everyone else. People seem to think Krylov is going to run through Blachowicz. Blachowicz is an experienced guy. He's shown some toughness as of late. His last, going through his DraftKings game log, he's no losses by finish. So he seems to have a decent floor, although Krylov is a different animal. I think that Blachowicz, while he's not varied on the feet, I think he can survive long enough, land some straight punches. I'm just not overall super impressed with Nikita Krylov because I don't rate Misha Serkinov super high, and he got steamrolled by him. People have seen what Krylov done on the regional scene and wins against Ed Herman, Franco Marbojoso, the guys I rattled off before. I'm just saying, let's hold off a little bit, guys. I know everyone wants to discount Blachowicz, and they're high on Krylov. I think this is a really close fight. I think the salaries are right here. I also think Krylov is going to be very chalk. I do think he's going to be very chalky. The odds on this fight, it's minus 130 for Krylov, plus 110 for Blachowicz. There's going to be line value on Krylov by the time this fight rolls around. You're making your lineups Friday and Saturday. Krylov should be popular. For that reason, I like Blachowicz as kind of a pivot here, and he's a little cheaper in what I think is a true pick'em. So I'm going to go with Blachowicz as my preferred play at 8,000. Next up, main event, probably my strongest take of the card, Mark Hunt 8,600, taking on Alexei Olynyk 7,600. I'm going to keep beating this drum. Alexei Olynyk is not good. I know he's got 11 Ezekiel chokes. A lot of those were against scrubs. They just were. And Junior Albini clearly had no idea how to defend an Ezekiel choke. An Ezekiel choke, if you've grappled at all, it's easy to defend if you don't have a gi on. With gi, it's much harder to defend when the grip gets locked in. There's more traction and more things to grip on. He's relying on grip and arm strength. When he locks in, you can push up on an elbow. You can go 2-on-1 on one of the hands, like the hand that is pushing in on the carotid. He wraps with one hand around one side. It's a terrible demonstration, and almost pushes in and just forces in to cut off the other carotid artery. With a gi, obviously you can take the gi and wrap over the neck. There's the wrong grip right there, but you get the idea. That's really all he has in his UFC fights. He had a terrible win against Travis Brown where they were both gassed. Victor Pesta also had no idea how to defend an Ezekiel. Curtis Blades beat the crap out of Alexei Olynyk on the feet. I know Blades is different caliber. I understand that. But Mark Hunt has better takedown defense than we think. I don't think Olynyk's going to be able to get him down or hold him down. Hunt is enough of a professional that I assumed he's drilled the Ezekiel at least a few times. And I'm not worried about Olynyk grabbing, pulling guard with the Ezekiel like he did against Albini. Mark Hunt obviously hits hard, and Olynyk just gets tagged on the feet. He's got poor defense. He slows down heavily too, whereas Hunt, doesn't have the best gas tank, but we've seen him go deep into fights when the pace isn't being pushed on him. Alexei Olynyk does not push a high pace. I don't think Hunt's going to gas out here. I think Hunt is going to land something big and put Olynyk to sleep to end the night. I like Hunt a bunch here at 8,600. I can't get behind Alexei Olynyk. Fading him has burned me in the past. If you want to hop off, I get it. He's right in the hot streak. But for me, I'm not going off brand here. I don't think Alexei Olynyk and the Ezekiel choke are any good. I got Mark Hunt at 8,600. So that's what I have for you guys this week, unless there are any questions in chat, which I don't happen to see this week. Pretty quiet week in chat. So I want to thank everybody who watched this live. Again, check out DFS Army, Loudmouth MMA, Newsom MMA, coming off of a really big week last week, looking to keep it rolling. Good luck in your contest. Find me on Twitter at the DFS Sniper with 1S as you are building your lineups. More than happy to answer any questions. Give me a follow. Subscribe to this YouTube page. Give the video a thumbs up. Greatly appreciate all that stuff, guys. I really, really do. Good luck. As I said, good luck in your contests. I will talk to you later this week, or if I don't, I'll see you for the next card. Have a good one.